Headline, New York Times. Is a cure to male loneliness sharing immaculate grid scores and remembering some guys like Bip Roberts with the fellas?
Bip Roberts.
Yes. Yes. So far, all I want to talk about is messy and immaculate grid. We're in the summer, folks.
The pre-show morning meetings are a New York Times trend piece now.
We're in the summer, and the Women's World Cup matches start at 3 a.m. I'm struggling here. By the way, huge matchup tonight for the U.S. women's national team up against the Netherlands. A very difficult test, and we'll find out if we can sleep in again for the match against Portugal tonight with this 9 p.m. Eastern, very friendly start.
9 p.m. Eastern tonight, then 3 a.m. against Portugal, correct? This is the...
Yeah, it's been a really interesting tournament in that if you follow women's international competition every 4 years, like most, even I would say most soccer fans, they will pay attention to women's soccer, not in domestic leagues, maybe the occasional Champions League final. It's not super readily accessible. If you're following this competition and you're just borrowing your knowledge from what you've seen previously, you're a little confused by this because the world has gotten better. And this is an argument for pumping resources into the game and expanding your network, as we talked about the Filipinas and them just deciding we're going to go after mainly Americans.
Amin has a take on this. We're going to drag Amin in here later so we can go to geopolitical war over this. But yes, exactly. Yeah. No, there's this larger trend, right? Like, oh, wait, women's sports actually has fan bases that can support these things. And actually, if they're only given a little bit more budget, some more attention, like this is a real viable business in a world where everything is decentralized. And all you need is to support a thing with a fan base. And this clearly has it.
The U.S. has had so many injuries to their team. And as the rest of the tournament plays out, I see all these other nations get better, that I'm wondering if there's a recalibration in the sport. And I don't really know what to expect tonight against the Netherlands because the women's national team spread against Vietnam was 6.5. And they grinded out a 3-0 victory. And is that a rising tide for Vietnam? Is that the U.S. getting worse? This is a result that whatever happens tonight, that you can probably project forward and get a better understanding of it, because I'm struggling. Ireland went up 1-0 on an Olympico goal against Canada, and it looked like Canada was done and dusted, and they've battled back. But it's been a very interesting tournament in terms of people that, like myself, that thought they had a grasp on the sport, and I've been surprised by a lot of them.
Well, I think it's definitely time to expand it. Like, there is much more parity now than maybe 8 years ago. But also, I think fans, like, we just talked to Meg Linehan from The Athletic for Off the Looking Glass. The episode will be out a week from today, and she made the point that anyone who's been watching international soccer was not surprised by the U.S.-Vietnam score. I think the Alex Morgan penalty was something that, they would want back. It should have been a little bit of a higher margin. They missed a couple chances, but it wasn't. Vietnam was a more talented team than Thailand 4 years ago, which I think fans kind of were like, oh, we should be beating the crap out of every team in the group stage.
Right.
Yeah, every Southeast Asian nation we should be
which is
laying
not
7
the
goals
case.
on.
And also, like, she made another good point, which was that in 2015, the U.S. women's national team won the World Cup, but every game was a battle. And it's very rare. Even when you have the best roster and the best team, you're not blowing people out every single game. It's still a really tough tournament. There's a reason why winning the World Cup is very difficult to do. So the Netherlands game, it's going to be a really tough matchup. But like your point about injuries is a good one. The U.S. women's national team is missing a couple of their best players because they had season-ending injuries earlier in this year. But injuries has been the story of almost every team in this World Cup. There's a starter for the Netherlands out tonight who just got hurt. There are top stars on almost every big team that are missing this World Cup. And no one is really sure why there are so many knee injuries in the sport right now. There's been pieces in like every newspaper
about like ACLs, right? Like,
ACL is essentially the Tommy John injury for pitchers. You're going to have, at the very least, one major knee injury.
But there's so many.
But
it
seems specific.
There's biology at play, and there's also surfaces, because the surfaces aren't as great as the men's.
Well, the murder mystery of who is killing all of these soccer players' ACLs. I mean, it's a question about gender and certainly like physiology, right? Like, why is it happening at a rate that is so disproportionate in women's soccer versus men's soccer, for instance? and you're saying the surfaces are one candidate. Certainly the way the body is built is another. Is that the prevailing theory?
Those are the ones like Jess noted. There have been multiple podcasts
That's
put on this.
crazy.
Multiple
I mean,
think
it
pieces
is
put on
wild.
this.
It is wild, right? That like this is a thing that is
Yeah, you can't get too attached to a young, up and coming, promising soccer
because
player
their leg might snap.
because you know that they're at least going to have a season that's undone by injury on the club level. Especially now that you can count on the regularity of the club schedule as Europe becomes more and more of a force in the women's soccer world, and as more Americans gravitate towards those more competitive leagues with bigger resources, you're going to be seeing this. And the U.S. has fallen victim to this with ill-timed injuries. You could field a team, a starting 11 with players that are unavailable to injury, and they could probably make it to the knockout round.
Oh, Ali Krieger said that the U.S. could win a World Cup with a B team and got in a lot of trouble for saying that 4 years ago. So be careful.
I just said knockout round. And look, I think the Philippines is kind of proving that if you're around the U.S. soccer program but not quite good enough to crack it, or you're just closer, whatever your reasons are for picking the Philippines, this is
because they're the best.
You can still make a deep run and surprise folks in this tournament and maybe make a knockout stage run. I thought that result from the Philippines opened my eyes to a whole new women's soccer world where New Zealand should not be dropping.
Yeah, the host
game.
nation, one of the host nations, right? Like the depth chart in American soccer at all levels when it comes to women's soccer is unbelievable. And it's something that, look, whenever we talk about the Women's World Cup, I'm glad that we're getting to a point where Mike, in his degeneracy, gambling on these games is also actually resembling what this sport should become, which is a thing that we don't just talk about in the frame of this is a cause we should support because there is this larger meta conversation around how they are enemies of the right. It's just like, I get that. I'm happy to have that conversation. But in the main, I'm like, it's also high-level sports that feels like it's worth gambling on for all the reasons you would gamble on other things.
Yeah, and a lot of networks are gambling on it. And I don't know. I saw that the ratings because the U.S. women's national team had their first match of the tournament the same time Messi had his match. And the numbers on conventional television, the Messi match was available over cable television over network television in Spanish language. I believe Univision had that. And Telemundo and Fox had the Women's World Cup match, and over conventional television, it was 5-1. The Women's World Cup won that. But as we get into these later starts with the next match against Portugal, as it's a more difficult tournament to wrap your head around, to me, as someone that is an observer of women's soccer, I know enough about it. I was excited about it. I know about the rosters. I know about the injuries. I'm still kind of at a loss and kind of feels a little bit like a fever dream to me because I can't get a hold of when these matches are starting, and it's just really hard to follow for me. And I was kind of hoping for more confirmation bias, and I'm getting smacked in the face by the tournament right now telling me, oh, you don't know shit. And I can't stay up at 3 a.m. to actually learn my shit. It's frustrating.
It is. I feel like I'm not sure what Fox's scheduling plan is going forward when the U.S. is going to be playing in the middle of the night, but it is unfortunate that I've been trying to find replays on in primetime or some sort of World Cup show, and I don't know where that is. I can't figure it out. I've been listening to podcasts and kind of seeking out my own second screen experiences, but when I'm sitting on my couch wanting to watch TV at night, there haven't been very many games on when I'm trying to watch it. But at the same time, international women's soccer does not revolve around the United States. It's very important for the game to have a tournament on the other side of the world. This is huge for New Zealand and Australia. New Zealand had their first men's or women's World Cup game in the opening game, which they won. And then, of course, they lost to the Philippines in their second game. But it is really, really important to have games outside of just the United States and Europe, even though it isn't catered to my specific wants and needs.
I'm embarrassed to say this because I care deeply about how people perceive me, and I
haven't noticed, Mike.
And I want people to know that I'm well-intentioned and that I'm an ally. But I'm also more into the Leagues Cup because of the start times and also because I follow MLS and I follow Liga MX, and to me these are dream matchups, and it's a lot easier to follow.
I don't think you have to feel guilty for wanting to watch TV at 8 p.m. versus 3 a.m. I don't think anyone's telling you that you should feel bad
I'm
about
an ally.
that. You should probably Your guilt over this is telling me something about you
I feel
that I don't think is what you want us to know about.
no.
How you
Look,
feel.
I wear,
Methinks
I wear
the gambler
everything.
doth protest too much.
I wear everything on my sleeve, and I want you to know. And I've spoken to several soccer players that are women. Several.
My
Several.
other,
Some of my
other
favorites. I have a
favorite
Sam Kerr
subplot.
jersey.